Today on Locked On Red Wings, Steve Eiserman spends big in free agency.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast, while Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, with as big of a splash, or as many splashes, I should say, as Steve Eiserman made in free agency day number one, it's going to be pretty much impossible to give you in-depth breakdowns of every single signing today. So what we're going to do is today we're kind of just going to go through who they signed, give overall reactions and thoughts, talk about like why maybe some of these signings got made, our favorite and least favorite signing, and then kind of talk about the direction of the team given these signings as well, because it's just there's a discussion to be had there. But as far as in-depth conversations about each individual player, I think that'll happen across this week and maybe a little bit in the next week, because of the fact that we are also at 5 days a week for the next 2 weeks. And then we go down to 3 on July 17th. We go into off-season mode. So because we have so much time left to kill until we go down 3 days a week, we're going to be doing the players kind of not like one player an episode, but we'll do 3 an episode probably, and then get through the week. But today, just initial reaction, initial thoughts. Scotty, how was your weekend? And what was your thought process on this, what ended up being a very active free agency for Steve Eiserman?
Yeah, man. I mean, it was a busy one for sure. Obviously a lot happened in Detroit in regards to NHL free agency. I mean, I don't even know like where to really begin.
Right?
Because so much happened. They brought in
first
so
Twitter
much.
broke.
Sorry?
First Twitter broke.
Yes. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole. But yes, the fact that I didn't and intentionally broke right when the like one of the biggest sports days of the year, and NBA and NHL free agency happening at the same time. So that was kind of humorous for sure. But thank goodness post notifications still work. So I still got from Elliot, still keep me up to date on everybody. But I mean, I don't know where do we start? Do you have any idea where you want to start?
Let's do chronologically.
Okay,
I woke up on Saturday morning, and the Red Wings had bought out Kailer Yamamoto. So we talked the other day, and we talked about how like Kailer Yamamoto was like the guy we put a lot of the emphasis on, but we talked about why the trade even happened. And we had this idea pop in our head that maybe taking on Yamamoto's contract was the cost that the Red Wings had to give back in order to get Klim Kostin. We had talked about how maybe Kostin was the guy that the Red Wings actually wanted, and that proved to be true. Apparently there was conversations that the Red Wings wanted to keep Kailer Yamamoto, but they opted to just buy him out because given his age, they only have to pay him 1/3 of his salary for the next 2 years. So it's like $500,000 and $400,000, nothing at all. And they got Klim Kostin on a brand new deal. They signed him to I believe a 2-year deal worth $2 million each. Clearly, this is a guy that Steve Eiserman is going to bring a definite edge to the bottom 6 and provide a lot of physicality that team lacked. And I mean, he played really sheltered minutes with Edmonton, and it's a guy that he thinks that could have a little bit of an offensive uptick as well. I mean, 21 points in 57 games, the Oilers this last season. He might think that maybe he can eclipse 30 and just provide an extra little bit of scoring and edge down there in the bottom 6, which is much needed.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and I mean, we'll keep going into detail. They added several people that kind of have the ability to fit that mold. But yeah, I think the one thing that this team, with the amount of players the amount of holes that they had going into this offseason, whether it's players leaving or just like not mainstays at the bottom of, bottom 6 and bottom 4 defensively, like the one thing that they had to offer was playing time, right? Like they had that, and that's something that, the stacked rosters at the top of the league or whatnot don't obviously have. So yeah, when you have cap space and the ability to play people, that makes you able to pull off trades like that and take on, the buyouts, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah. Then the Red Wings re-signed Matt Luff, the dog.
The dog.
1 year, $775,000. That's really close to the it's a two-way contract as well. It's a two-way contract, so he has a minor salary of $400,000. It's really close to the league minimum, I think, if it's not already. So that was just a depth piece. Again, like we saw last season, those pieces are important for when injuries happen. You have guys to call up who can play and eat NHL minutes. Perfectly fine bringing Luff back. I have no qualms with that.
Yep, two-way as well. That was pretty. I think when we talked about him like a month or so ago, we said fine as long as it's a two-way, and there you go.
I mean, with him and Zarnik down in the AHL, you have guys who can eat NHL minutes. So this one surprised me. Gustav Lindstrom re-signed. When the Red Wings did not, they gave him a $950,000 salary, and I think they saved his qualifying offer would have been $990,000. So they saved $40,000 by not giving him a qualifying offer. We were talking pretty confidently, like it sounded like he was gone.
Yeah,
and we were like. I mean, obviously, the Red Wings desperately need a right-handed defenseman, but he just was not playing, like, in our eyes, not that we know anything, but, like, in our eyes, an NHL caliber style of game. And when they didn't qualify him, we were like, he gone.
Yep.
And then he back.
Yeah, I guess so. It's a depth thing. We'll see how many opportunities he actually gets, but yeah.
It definitely sounds like with it being a 1 year, like this is your final chance to prove you can be it. But I think he'll probably
it's also expendable. If he doesn't perform, it's going to cost them nothing to part ways.
I think he'll probably just end up being your seventh D-man again, cycling in, if anything.
At best, yeah.
But I mean, that does it for the guys that they quote unquote brought back, because Klim Kostin obviously hadn't played a game, but they had his rights.
Yeah.
Now we get into the exciting stuff. Do you want to talk goaltenders? Because I guess I don't know. Can't remember what happened chronologically first. Justin Holl or the goalies?
No, I think the goalies happened first.
Awesome.
At least one of them did. I think Reimer happened first. I think that was the first move we made.
So we talked a lot about how the Red Wings desperately needed a backup, and we knew they were going to go out there and get one. They signed two goalies. James Reimer, obviously out of San Jose. They signed him to a 1 year deal with a modified 7-team no trade clause, $1.5 million. For me, signing Reimer, it clearly indicates that Ville Husso is the starter and he is the backup. Like, that's how that feels, because he had a pretty down year. I want to say throughout his career, James Reimer has been a pretty solid netminder.
Yeah, oh yeah.
His statistics, this is the first year James Reimer has ever had a save percentage dip below 900, but it was a brutal 890 this season on a bad Sharks team. And I know his goals saved above expected were in the negative as well. So you can actually say part of it was because of his play. But as a 1 year, just we need a backup goalie for Ville Husso, I actually don't mind this signing, especially if he can maybe reclaim what he had done, what we know he can do from his career, and not what was last year.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously, like you said, this past season was comfortably the worst year of his career. It's not even really close. And this year will be his age 35 season, so he's not a long-term, kind of option back there either. But as I don't know, I think the word flyer is kind of overused, but as a stopgap, right? As someone who okay, we talked a lot, the free agent market in general. There wasn't a lot of long-term kind of goalies that fit the bill of what you were looking for. You were looking for somebody who could play, 30 to 40 games and was relatively young, and you could plug in there with Husso for the next couple of years. That really didn't exist. So going out and getting someone who is 2 years removed, or I guess a year removed rather, from a 911 save percentage just at, 2 seasons ago at 48 games played as well over half of the season. I mean, yeah, I don't mind it. And then they obviously got a little bit of insurance with the next dude we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I think he will bounce back, especially on a Red Wings team, which, I mean, albeit isn't a playoff team, or at least wasn't this last season, is still better than the San Jose Sharks. And intentionally so. I do think he will bounce back and have a better year, more in line with what he has had throughout his career. And he is capable, as we have seen these last 2 years with the Sharks, playing 40-plus games and putting up good numbers. That not this past year, but the season prior, the 21-22 season, like you said, 48 games, 911 save percentage. So, as I said, Ville Husso, is probably the starter, but they're more than capable of being that tandem if need be.
For sure. Yeah. It gives you an option where, and if something were to happen to Husso, you feel, at least on July 2nd, you feel comfortable like Reimer can go out there and be a 1A for a short period of time if, Husso were to miss any amount of time. And obviously, if it's December and the dude has an 880 save percentage, that opinion no longer stands. But right now in July, we can feel that way.
Yeah, and so we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about Alex Lyon and get to the rest of the guys that were signed by the Detroit Red Wings. But first, got to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $2,000 or $200. I'm sorry, got it wrong. $200. The last one was $2,000. This one's $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are talking briefly, just kind of giving a brief reaction to each individual signing, go more in depth as the week goes on. Red Wings then went on to sign another goalie, Scotty, which this one caught me off guard, but I like this signing even more. Signing Alex Lyon out of the Florida Panthers. This last season with the Florida Panthers, he had a .914 save percentage in a limited 15 games played. Got to put that out there, but kind of crumpled in the playoffs. 4 games, .888 save percentage. Bobrovsky took over. And honestly, between him and Tkachuk, might have won the Conn Smythe had the Panthers gone all the way. But Alex Lyon, 2 years with a $900,000 cap hit. I think he'll probably end up serving most of his season in Grand Rapids with Bratstrom walking away. It's going to be probably either him and Lethleman or him and Kosa in Grand Rapids with the Griffins. And I think that's a great idea because, I mean, he's proved it limited exposure at the NHL level, he can perform. So, if an injury happens, he can be your first call up.
Yeah, this is very quietly one of my favorite signings. It won't be my favorite because, again, like you said, at the end of the day, it'll be more of a depth signing. But 2 years for a 30-year-old that, like you said, in his limited time, has shown the ability to be a fine, serviceable backup. As long as there isn't so many injuries ahead of him on the depth chart where he ever has to be the 1A. This is going to be a nice value sign. He's never going to be a world beater, but we saw how quickly last season, the last 2 seasons actually, we've seen firsthand how quickly a goalie room can thin out, and I think that this is one of those okay, we're going to give ourselves insurance, and it's no matter what, we're going to have this insurance, dang it, because we're not doing what's been happening the last couple of seasons all over again where, one goalie struggles or one goalie gets hurt, and then the entire goalie situation is just a disaster.
Yep. And then after that, Scotty, the Red Wings move on and sign the first question mark of the offseason.
Yes.
Justin Holl out of the Toronto Maple Leafs, a 10-team no-trade list, 3 years, $3.4 million. Every single year. He does fill a huge need in that he's a right side D-man who is 6'4" and 210 pounds. He is well known as a defensive defenseman who's good at puck retrievals in the defensive zone and breakouts. That about does it. Now, you want to be careful too because he became the scapegoat for the Toronto Maple Leafs, especially in the playoffs. He kind of like the defensive version of Mitch Marner on that hockey team. And whenever Toronto hates somebody, you got to take it with a grain of salt, in my opinion, because they either overhype or overhate anyone on their roster outside of Austin Matthews because he deserves all the hype. He's so talented. I don't hate this signing as much as I hate some of the other some other people claim to hate this signing. I think that it is an overpay at $3.4 million, but I think that's a drop in the bucket considering how much cap space the Red Wings have and how desperate and depressed the market is and how desperate the Red Wings were for right side D-man. I think that this signing is fine especially with the cap going up so much in the next few years, I think it's going to be fine. I don't think it's that big a deal as people are making out to be. I don't think he's as bad as people are trying to make it out to be. I don't even think this is as bad as the Sherratt signing last year. And some people were saying it's worse. I think this is better than the Sherratt signing.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was curious because we didn't really go through, because we wanted to save the conversation for the recording. We didn't really go through our thoughts over the weekend when these signings were happening. And I was wondering if we were going to disagree or butt heads on that one. And we aren't, because I agree with you. I think that this is fine. Like the biggest thing again is the Wings have, or at least had so much cap space going into free agency. And I was talking to a buddy of mine about just free agency, and he's one of the Ducks fans that I keep in touch with, and they made some bigger money signings that had some people scratching their heads too. And I said to him, I was like, I think people sometimes forget that, like, cap space is only an asset if eventually you plan on using it. And that doesn't mean just spend stupidly. And that doesn't mean just fill up the cap space just to fill it up. But for 3 years and for 3.4 with, as you said, the cap just going up in general next year, like it's definitely going to. I really think that there's a lot worse ways to spend money. It does fill a need. He's not going to put points on the board. He's not going to be a point producer, but especially for the right side of our defense, they just need depth, and they need good, solid defensive defensemen. I have a hard time being as angry as a lot of other people seem to be about this one. He's not going to be the best defenseman in the league, no, but he's gonna be a bottom 4 D man on this team. I don't know.
And let me be clear. Is it a guy I would have personally signed? No. Do I think it's an overpay?
Agreed.
Yes. But do I think it's the end of the world like some people are making it sound to be? No. I think he's going to be a productive defenseman in the back end that's going to eat a lot of minutes. And I think that is, I think that's fine. I don't think it's the end of the world. This team,
as long as he's not a traffic cone out there, it'll be fine.
Some people will say that he is. So that's where the argument
right. I understand. But if especially like after this season, right? Like this, if you're just looking at it in a 1-year vacuum, like you're going to pay him 3.4 this year, then next year the cap is going to go up. You're going to have some more, money off the books. We'll talk about that a little bit later, I'm sure. And then you're going to have 2 years left of him at 3.4 in the back end, 2-year deal at that point. I don't know. I don't think it's like a super long-term, like handcuff commitment. It doesn't screw this team salary cap wise. It fills a need. I really don't have too much of an issue with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, we'll talk more about it as the week goes on. Yeah, but overall, my thoughts are like, I would have preferred we didn't sign him, but I don't think it's the end of the world that they did. And he,
sure, he wasn't number 1 on my list. I'm not throwing a parade that we got him, but I don't think it's like ruining the offseason.
Let's move on to some of the signings I did like. JT Compher. This is somebody I pointed out before free agency started, that this is a guy I kind of want the Red Wings to get. Red Wings are weak down the middle. He can play center and right wing, which actually right wing is a side that they do need a little bit of help in as well. Not a fan of the term. 5 years at 5.1. But he is 28 years old, so he's on the right side of 30. So, by the time that 5 years is up, it's not really going to hurt the Red Wings too bad. It just kind of, my only hesitation with this deal is it feels like this year's Andrew Kopp, in that, and coming off of a career year, 28 years old, you signed him to a 5-year deal for like $5 million. I think to the time, at least when he was signed, Compher was like the highest value contract signed this offseason. I think I don't know if that's been surpassed now on day number 3 by the time people are listening to this. But he had 52 points in 82 games played with the Colorado Avalanche this past year. Historically, he's probably good for like 33, 35. That's what I don't like, is you're paying $5.1 million for a guy who's going to get probably between 30 and 40 points. I think that's an overpay, but that's free agency. But what I do like is, again, huge need filled down the center, down the middle, or on the wing if that's where he ends up playing. He's another right-handed shot, which is really important. I know some people might think I'm making too much out of the right-handed shots, but they're so hard to come by, and they can contribute so much to a team. And he has great two-way play. He's a great two-way player. Again, kind of this year's Andrew Kopp without the core muscle surgery.
Right. Yeah. No. Let's go to break, and I'll kind of riff after because I think the only question is really the term, but the player. I think not only do I really like it, but I think he's dang near a perfect fit in the Newsy system.
Absolutely. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Scotty's thoughts on JT Compher. Segment 3.
So dramatic.
So dramatic. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, what are your initial thoughts on the JT Compher deal?
Well, my first thought was that's a lot of money.
It is.
Certainly. I let me get one thing out of the way. I have zero issue with 5 years, like zero, truly. The only issue I have is I mean it's over 5 by 5, right? Like if it was 5 years and you shave $1 million off, I think a lot of people would be a lot more receptive of the deal. And I know a lot of people initially kind of screamed overpay on this one too, but I mean, I could, reiterate the same thing with the salary cap that I kind of just explained, right? Like you have to utilize the cap room you have eventually. And on top of that, this isn't like this is going to hinder you for the next 5 years. Like people act like if you overpay someone $1 million a year, that it's like gonna turn into like the worst contract ever, and like all overpays just like prevent teams from spending in the future, and that's like not how it works at all. And even with the 10 contracts the Wings handed out in 2 days, they still have like 10 mil until they're even at the salary cap. So like it's like this isn't gonna prevent them from doing stuff in the future, albeit I do agree it is probably more than I would have expected JT Compher to get. But I mean, as far as the player on the ice, I love it. I think that it is, as far as fit goes, it might be the best fit of the entire offseason. I mean, I'm looking down the list. I think there's a really real argument that, he fits into what the Red Wings really needed and are trying to do this fall. Better than maybe anybody. I mean, I guess goalie maybe is something, but like as far as skaters go, he probably is the best fit of the entire offseason. Like you said, great two-way player. He's going to really bolster up the forward defense, which was such a point of emphasis for this team this season and in the like Newsy system, right? The new system that was implemented, like they talked a lot about how they really wanted forwards to play good defense. And he certainly will help in that regard. And yeah, I mean, I don't expect 52 every single year either. I completely agree with that, but I don't think it's ridiculous if he plays 80 to assume that around 40 points and around a 20, well, I don't know, a 2020 season year in and year out, I don't think should be completely off the table. I mean, the last 2 years he's gotten 18 and 17. I guess his career high is 18 goals in a season. But I think that if he's pushing a 2020 year, or maybe if the assists are a little higher, then what he brings defensively and how well I think he is going to fit this season is a huge not season. I've said the word a million times already, and now I just forgot it. System. He fits his system so well. I'm pretty pleased with this one, albeit again, admittedly, a little bit more money than I would have assumed.
Yeah, and also note too, he's really good on the power play, which is also a position of need. I like the signing a ton. He's kind of he's like the inverse of Andrew Kopp, where Andrew Kopp's like a penalty kill guy.
Right.
I like the signing a lot. I just, again, too much money, too much term, but I also understand depressed market, this free agency. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that certainly helps.
That's literally how it's going to happen when there's just not as much talent on the free agent market, guys who are going to get a little bit too much money. But I really like his addition, as I like Daniel Sprong's addition. Another forward, right-handed shot, can play right wing, left wing, $2 million for 1 year. This is again, we're talking about taking a flyer on a guy, right? Yeah. This is taking a flyer on a guy who's coming off a career year at the Seattle Kraken. He had 46 points in 66 games played, 21 goals, 25 assists. He's never sniffed that level of production before this past year. So this is Steve Eiserman giving him 1 year to say and saying, prove it. And he's going to fit right in the middle, probably middle, maybe bottom six. It's hard to tell with this Red Wings team's current structure where he'll go. But, I mean, he's going to get every opportunity. Again, he played sheltered minutes with Seattle, too. I think he averaged like maybe 11 minutes a night at best. So he's going to get more minutes here to try and replicate that kind of production. So I'm really excited to see what he can do.
Yeah. This was he averaged 11.25 this year. But yeah, and like when you look across at like Compher, we already said is 28 years old. And then Sprong, 26, and just getting that 1 year kind of prove it deal. Again, I'll just kind of regurgitate the thoughts I had at the very beginning. Like this team has the asset of playing time in the bottom six that they can offer to free agents and to trade partners. And that will hopefully give even more value to some people in a market that was, like you said, kind of suppressed. So yeah, I'm super excited about this one. I mean, he did have a 21-25 season in just 66 games this year. So adding that into, a lot more playing time, hopefully more games played as well. I'm actually really, really excited about this one.
Yeah, and then so this one I was kind of a little bit of a head scratcher for me. Adding Christian Fisher from the Arizona Coyotes, 1 year deal, $1.125 million, 26 years old. Can play right wing or left wing, right-handed shot. Steve Eiserman, and I think I'm starting to figure out what his MO was this offseason, filling up on right-handed shots, which I can respect. But his career best was 79 games played back in 18. He had 33 points. This year was his second best year, 27 points in 80. He's a depth forward, and that's pretty much all I know about Christian Fisher.
Yeah, well, I mean, and this team needed depth forwards. Like, I don't think it's, I don't think this is like a big brain thing. I think this is just you needed right shot for like depth forwards. And yeah, they got a guy who, like you said, had 13 goals and 14 assists this year. Like if he can play a full season and be around a 15-15 player in the bottom six, I think everyone would be pretty pumped about that. I mean, if he's a fourth liner, you get 15-15 out of a fourth liner. I think everyone would be really, really excited about it. So yeah, I don't think that this is, like rocket science. I think this is just trying to fill a need with some of the best out there. He's only 26 years old. Another 1 year kind of prove it thing. It's 1.1 million. If it doesn't work out, who cares anyway? Yeah, I think this is adding depth. The one overlying theme throughout this entire free agency period is I think we're going to this fall look back at the depth of the Red Wings and realize that it got better. The top end talent they weren't able to add. They clearly they weren't active enough on the trade. Not active enough. That's probably too dramatic. But like clearly they didn't add anyone via trade, and the free agency market was just as such where there wasn't really a game breaking like break the bank. You're going to get over a point per game player that the Wings were willing to go out there and get in free agency. So they said, okay, well, we're going to play to what the market has. And that's a whole lot of depth players. And the Wings lost a whole lot of depth players. Like, I think it's just filling holes is really what they did this entire, first 3 days of free agency here. And I'm not too mad about the current result. I almost said final result.
Yeah. And then we move on to the Red Wings final signing as I know it right now. I'm trying to think if there's anyone I've missed, but that would be Shayne Gostisbehere, 1 year, $4 million contract, 4.125 to be exact, 30 years old, shoots left, can play both left defense and right defense. I'm a little surprised he only got 1 year, but and I kind of got ratioed on Twitter because it was a knee-jerk reaction. I called it a reclamation project because when I think of Gostisbehere, I think of like how he had gone through some troubles earlier in his career. But it was not the case anymore. He's been pretty dang good his last few seasons. And I own up to the fact that that was just a knee-jerk reaction. And I could not stand up for myself because the rate limits were exceeded. So I was getting ratioed and I couldn't respond to anyone.
There was a couple people that like added the Red Wings account and were like, oh, like, like a few people that were like, oh, like Locked On Red Wings, whatever. And said Reclamation Project. And I was like, we never said that. I was like, who said? I was like, unless that just slipped out on accident. I have zero recollection of us on the show ever calling him a Reclamation Project because I don't believe that. So thank you for explaining to me what happened. Obviously, I haven't seen any tweets either because of the rate limit thing. So
yeah, that was me. I was just wrong. And I'll own up to that.
Hey, whatever.
I saw the signing and I just tweeted the first thing that came into my head. But anyways, the player itself really liked the signing. He's a puck moving defenseman. He plays both defensively and offensively pretty well. He had 41 points this last year, split time with the Coyotes and the Hurricanes. career high of 65 points back with the Flyers in 18. I mean, he's a huge ad, I think, for the Red Wings on the back end. I mean, you just instantly got I don't know where he would fit in the lineup, but hot dang, like that really makes the back end a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say right now, if we're doing like favorite and least favorite signings, this is my favorite signing of the offseason, and it's pretty comfortable at that. I texted one of my best friends who's really into the Wings, and we kind of freaked out together. Like you said, I mean, we've talked about it, and we've cited it a couple of times. His Philly career was a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
Like he went from like top prospect that like he was a runner up for the Calder his rookie season with Philly. He got Norris votes, like down ballot. He finished like 15th or something, but he got Norris votes as a rookie. He got like Bing votes. He was a reserve for the All-Star game as a rookie. Like he had jumped onto the scene, had 17 goals as a rookie defenseman, 30 assists, you know what I mean? Like with plus defense as well. And was like really splashed onto the scene. And then kind of the rest of his Philly career really was just a roller coaster of ups and downs. At one point had 5 goals in 42 games in 1920. Like just production down across the board. His average time on ice started going down because of it. But then, it was almost like an every other year thing, weirdly enough. And then he left Philly, goes to Arizona, puts together a really, really nice season his first year in Arizona. And then last year, obviously, is part of the trade market and finds himself on Carolina to end the season. But like, this is just a guy who, when he's at his best, is genuinely one of, I don't want to call him like the premier or like the best defenseman in the NHL. I'm not trying to rile people up too much, but when he's at his best, he is a game-changing defenseman, like legitimately a game changer. And he is probably on your second pair. That's phenomenal. And it's a 1-year deal. Like he's probably going to take the prove it deal. If he has a really good season, he'll be gone next year because he'll want, a bigger contract, and that's fine. But as far as value, 1 year, $4 million, and like just filling what the Wings are trying to do here, I am in love with this addition. I cannot say enough good things about it. And it really is like all reward without any of the huge risk, because again, it's a 1-year deal, but B, you added so much defensively, and you have so much defensive depth within prospects in your system as well, that if it does go wrong and he does end up going back to one of the years where he was not productive at all, then it's really like not the biggest deal in the world to you. Like, you can overcome
trade deadline to me.
Right. So it's I love it. Like I said, to me, this is my favorite move of the offseason for the Red Wings. And honestly, one of my like favorite deals, I guess, like when looking around the league, I think it's one of the best value deals that was made over the last few days.
Yeah. And there were 2 more signings Red Wings made, but these were strictly like depth signings for the Griffins. It was Brogan Rafferty, 28 years old, 2-way contract. And then also Tim Gettinger, 25 years old, 2-way contract. So they'll both be playing in the Grand Rapids. Those are just more depth guys. Scotty, we're already over time. I wanted to talk about Bertuzzi. We'll have to save that for another day, but he's going to Toronto for 1 year. So not the term that he wanted. We'll talk about that.
Weird deal.
Yeah, we'll have talked about that tomorrow. Real quick, favorite, least favorite acquisition.
I will say, favorite, clearly, Ghost Bear. Least favorite. I don't know. I don't know if I have like an overwhelming least favorite. I guessed Holl, but like, again, you're asking me to pick my least favorite. I guess it's him, but I already, as I said, 20 minutes ago, like I'm not nearly as mad as everybody else is. But when compared to, I guess, the 10 or 12 people we signed, I guess he's at the bottom. But
it can be
I don't think it's a crippling move.
It can be your least favorite, but still you like it more than what other people are making.
Yeah, and that's
where I'm at. Like it's still my least favorite signing. I gave my opinions pretty clearly back in segment 1, or was it 2? Either way, but I don't hate it as much as other people. It's still my least favorite, but I think I'm with you. I mean, I guess for the sake of just being different, I'll say Daniel Sprong was my favorite signing.
Sure.
But Gostisbehere is right up there too. So I like those deals a lot as like a big prove it. So yeah, later this week, guys, as it goes on, we're going to talk Bertuzzi. And
we'll break these down, like one by one, kind of go a little bit more in depth too. This is kind of just like initial reaction to everything type of episode.
Also, we'll talk about, why did the Red Wings spend so much money, especially after some of the comments that Steve Eiserman made during the draft. And we'll talk about, how much better this team really is because of this. So this is all to come later this week. So just stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings, guys. Scotty, any final thoughts?
We ball.
We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow, same time, same place. It's your team every day.